Hello, hello. This is Christina Barney watching Black Tea News. Hello, hello. Welcome to Black Tea News. I'm your host, Christina Barr, and today we're going to be talking about this article I read about a father who is concerned about his daughter he can't stop from being killed under the Canadian laws for MAID. And we've covered different stories on it before, and it just keeps getting darker. And I'm sure there's more stories that will be like this. But when you just kind of open the door, the floodgates, well, the flood will come in when you open the floodgates. So, um, I've already read stories like this before on the show. Like, I think it was Barry Weiss had covered a story about a mother who was trying to stop her son from being killed under MAID. And he was going blind, and that was the condition that he had to try to justify them taking his life. I think they were able to stop it because it got so much backlash that the doctors didn't want to go through with it, but the laws keep getting lax on this thing. And I'm concerned as that kind of policy. Canada seems pretty radical with it, what they have right now compared to like other places. But I definitely don't want that energy to come and trickle down here in the US. But I know there's a couple states that allow for that, but it's not to the extent that Canada does it. But they're very close. They're very close. So we'll be talking about that. Also, Joe Biden got a big haul the other day, raising a bunch of money with Colbert and Bill Clinton and Obama and all sorts of folks there at a ritzy fundraiser, while Trump was, at a funeral for a slain police officer. And folks are saying that Trump was pandering and to his base and other stuff like that. But it's, in the optics war, I'll I'll tell you who looks better. And I do think there's evidence that he cares and has cared about these sorts of things for a long time. But we'll get to that. And I also want to go through this tweet that Candace said about the Crisis King debate and touch on that a little bit today as well. But before we jump into all that, thank you to those in the chat and to you, those of you who are watching this back later. Hope you guys are having a good day. About to have, it's Easter weekend, Good Friday. So, of course, I go to church every Friday, but I'll be heading out sometime after the show. And I hope you're going to church this weekend. I mean, I hope everybody's going to church every weekend, but, a lot of people who don't usually find their ways into the pews, if there's pews, sometimes they're just normal chairs. But I hope you have an edifying weekend. Anyway, you guys can go to the blackteenies.com, check out different content, website articles, videos, etc. If you like what I do here, you guys can leave a donation on the website because it does cost a stream on my website, all that stuff. You guys can check out different merch on the site as well that also does support. So I got different cool stuff you guys can check out, and I have lots of books you guys can check out as well if you're a reader. I have 2 nonfiction books and the rest are fiction. So, I write for children and like to new adult, and there's action and romance and all sorts of different things. I just like to write what comes to my mind, and I don't really limit my imagination. So if that sounds like something you might be interested in, check it out. So I don't have a meme or anything to start you off with today. But really quickly, I want to talk about this fundraiser that Biden and them had, which, by the way, there are protesters outside and pro-Palestine folks that are upset with Biden for not doing more, etc. And they're I don't know, they're not talking a lot about it. People on the right are talking about some of the wacky people who are out there protesting, but they don't want to draw too much attention to it. And Biden is obviously worried about those folks because he keeps pandering to them. But they raised a lot of money. I think I saw like $25 million. So they had Obama, they had Bill Clinton, who are far cooler than Joe Biden. Unfortunately for Joe Biden, cool is not transferable. They already tried that in 2016 with Hillary Clinton, and Obama had to go out there and try to get that woman elected. And, he was still the president at the time, so he had a lot of weight there. Um, but cool is not transferable. She was married to Bill Clinton, one of the coolest presidents that the Democrats had. As that's kind of like the uh, outward opinion. It's not really my opinion, but he came out with the saxophone and all that stuff. He's kind of a bit of a legend, was their celebrity until Barack Obama became their celebrity, and then Bill kind of became this creepy dude who had all these kind of creepy allegations and looks like he might be suffering from syphilis or something. But they still keep trotting out that old pervy man. It's really wild to me. I thought after shame on me. Shame on me. I thought after some of the Epstein stuff, they would try to distance themselves a lot from Hillary and Bill, but they had them at the convention in 2020, and I was floored. I'm like, you don't have to keep highlighting them. You don't have to deal with them. This is a choice that you guys are making. I know he's a former president and she's a former first lady. But why not just distance yourself and be like, oh, he's in the past, have him like retreat to some kind of corner? You have to keep putting up in the forefront. So he's still there. And they were doing so much stuff with them. Like, I thought it was weird. They put on a master class. You guys know that, like, the master class stuff that they do when you like learn how to cook from professional chef like Gordon Ramsay. I don't know if Gordon Ramsay has a master chef, but not master chef, master class thing. I got my sister a master class for uh gosh Danny Elfman, a Danny Elfman masterclass. So that was pretty neat. That was a gift that I gave her. So there's some neat masterclass things. But that one time they had like from Hillary Clinton and Bill Clinton. And I'm like, are they really trying to reform them? I thought to the point where Hillary was thinking about making a run, but obviously she didn't. But maybe they were testing the waters on reforming their image or her image, because it seemed like they were really trying to put them back on the forefront, even after everything that's happened with them. And so now he's at this fundraiser. I'm not surprised Obama's there. But again, their cool is not transferable. And Biden is decrepit and slow, even next to both of them. But they had a lot of celebrities there, lots of singers there. You had Queen Latifah who's there, and the girl from Glee who was like the main lead, and a bunch of other folks. It was a star-studded night, and they raised a lot of cash. But again, at the same time, Trump is out there honoring a fallen officer. So star-studded events don't scream, we are the party of the people. It doesn't scream, we're the party of the middle class. It doesn't scream that we're the party of those who are, struggling out there. Not in the least. But the goal is that they need to raise money because it's election season. I don't know what they're going to do with all that money. But money is only part of the story. Money is a big part of the story. But the reason why you need a lot of money with elections tends to be that you need to do something about your name ID. You need people to know you. You need people to know your policies. You need people to know the other guy's policies. And in this case, you got two presidents, one obviously the former, who are going up against each other. So I don't know what they're going to spend all that money on, because you don't really need to raise name ID. Everybody knows them. Everybody either did or didn't vote for them, unless they're like a fresh voter, like voting for the first time. So everybody basically knows them. There's so much that is known about Trump. There's so much that is known about Biden. You can look at their policies, or if you don't know their policies by now, I doubt that you're gonna see a commercial and be so informed. What hit pieces could they run and make against Trump that would change many people's minds by now? So a good ground operation really matters with campaigns and stuff too. But so much about needing the money is that folks don't know who that candidate is. Like if Ron DeSantis was being outraised 2-1 or something by Biden, that wouldn't be great. That wouldn't be great. But the issue with Biden is that the election is probably going to be an indictment on him, and he's not doing too hot. If it was him outraising maybe Haley or somebody, you'd be concerned about that, because they still have to build up their name ID. Even like someone like Ron DeSantis still had a lot of name ID to build up with, because there's tons of people who would listen to him and say, "Oh, I like him. I think I'm going to switch my vote." But people are already so attached to Trump, or there are people who didn't know him, which is crazy to me, because I'm like, he's one of the most famous governors and effective governors in the country, but we obviously care about politics more than the average person. So a lot of what people might know about him and some other candidates are just blurbs that are in the news here and there. Trump had an amazing advantage coming in 2016, because everybody knew who he was. Everybody knew who he was, and not only that, many people already liked him. When we had like caucus night in 2016 in Michigan, there are people who came to caucus for Trump, never seen them before in the party. But there are people who they sent out like letters or emails to people who would be interested in caucusing for Trump or whatever, and we had to vote for people who would be delegates to go to the national convention. And I remember one woman, he's like, "I read The Art of the Deal. I know this about." She gave a pretty good speech and stuff, but folks just came out. They knew him. They were fans of him. And there are a lot of people who like the idea of Trump, and I would hear them talk like, "You don't really understand this man." Like they kind of go into a caricature of like the best Republican thing you can think of, and then describe Trump as that. And I'm like, Trump is far kind of more complicated than that. So I didn't vote for those people, because I'm like, you don't get him. You don't get him. And but other people, like the woman who's like, I read his book, and there are people who understood that he was complicated. But the core thing about Trump is that, well, one, he doesn't like to be ripped off. And that's really at the core philosophy, I think. He likes to make a deal, and he likes to feel like he's getting the best out of a deal. And he's into branding, and winning is his MO. And you could say, I don't but he's got taken some L's. He has never accepted any of them. Midterm losses, like that's not my fault, it's somebody else's. And so he's like, all these people I endorsed, even though they were already gonna win without his endorsements. He's like, I picked all these people. He will not let go of that particular branding. So if people understood he's president, he wants to do a good job, because what he is the leader himself, and that's a good reflection upon him. But it's his country, so people had trust in him. So they, I have his book too. Well, I have a Art of the Deal, and I have Midas Touch. that he wrote with Rich Dad Poor Dad. So I think I got that in my Kindle. Well, that's why I read it. I'm sure it's, I don't know if it's downloaded right now, but I do have it in my Kindle. Let me see if I can find it real quick, just to show you guys. Not that you need to see. Yep. Oh, it's so. I watched The Apprentice. I love The Apprentice. Always um wanted to go on there. So there are many people who knew him as a household name, and then on top of people knowing Trump, seeing his brand so many places, you had the media playing Trump nonstop. They played Trump non freaking stop. And Mika and Morning, on the Morning Joe and them, they had Trump on all the time, all the time. And if you were unaware, and I mentioned this, someone had a headline. I liked the headline of the story. I mentioned quite often in the WikiLeaks that here it is. I did actually read it in the WikiLeaks stuff, but someone posted these screenshots of this article because they were rebutting someone, so I saw it and I saved it so you guys can dig a little deeper into this if you like. But WikiLeaks revealed DNC elevated Trump to help Clinton, and according to an email from Marissa Astor, Clinton campaign manager, Robbie Mook's assistant to Clinton campaign chair John Podesta, the campaign knew Trump was going to run and push his legitimacy as a candidate. WikiLeaks release show that it was seen as Clinton's best interest to run against Trump in the general election. The memo sent to the Democratic National Convention Committee also reveals the DNC and Clinton campaign were strategizing on behalf of their candidate at the very beginning of the primaries. We think our goals mirror those of the DNC, stated the memo attached to the email under the title Muddying the Waters. So some of those WikiLeaks and stuff, they talked about how they thought Clinton was leaning in too much into Trump being the nominee as her main strategy. Like that was a strategy. Elevate Trump as the person, and they thought he was going to be the weakest, and then he wins, and then she just wins. Like it would be like automatic. So she didn't really go to Wisconsin and other states really. They thought I guess we're going to have it in the bag. And that's what a lot of polling and other people said, and they were just so shocked on election night. But it was a plan. But anyway, the media played him up nonstop. They played him up nonstop compared to other people who really needed that name ID. And so everybody knows him. Everybody knows him worldwide. So my point in saying all that, obviously, again, is that Trump being outraised isn't going to stop him. So they could be very happy about their ritzy fundraiser, and I'm sure they need that money. But the thing that would help Joe Biden is if he just started governing in some kind of competent manner that made people feel comfortable with being able to vote for him again. Some kind of competent legislation, or I don't, you go back to executive orders like on the border and redo some of the Trump stuff. Just show people, and perhaps it's too late. I've seen people say I was going to give it to November, but it's too late now. There's some people who are done, who aren't just going to vote for either, or who aren't going to vote for him. I saw a video of Ben Shapiro saying he would, how some people say I would crawl over broken glass to vote for Trump. His thing is he will crawl over broken glass to vote against Biden. So he's at that point, and I'm sure other people who were on the fence or whatever. Well, he was on the fence basically. He was going to vote for the nominee, but to have that sort of mentality now, I don't know if Biden can fix that. I don't think there's time. besides like bribes. maybe. Maybe like so many bribes for people and pandering. I don't know. But there's so many people who do not want to vote for Trump, but they feel like they need to, and because they're probably like, well, he had a point, and he said all these terrible things were going to happen if Biden won, and they did, and Biden is still bad, and things were better under Trump. So you know what? Let me vote for him, or let me vote to make sure Biden doesn't win, or let me stay home. I don't care. I don't like either of these old men, and I think Trump's base is far more enthused. And then I think JFK, I mean, um, I'm sorry, RFK, um, he's not going to really pull as many people from Trump as probably earlier predicted, especially because his pick. I don't know if he had to pick somebody like Tulsi Gabbard or somebody, maybe that would have been interesting to some more people on the right. But picking someone who's, far left too, that doesn't give people kind of the balance that they would maybe hope for. So unless they want to throw up their finger and kind of be like to the system, like, screw you guys, I'm just gonna go in the middle, maybe we'll teach you a lesson and we'll focus on like better independence in the future. um he's gonna pull away from Biden more than Trump. And there was that fear that it would be more from Trump than Biden, but I don't think we're there anymore. I think people think that Biden is too big of a risk. So again, the money's not going to matter. And with the optics game, Trump is better at it. Trump is better at it. Now, Trump has made some mistakes, things that made me frankly infuriated with some of his people making massive mistakes. Like I thought having the dinner with Fuentes, for example, when that happened, I was so upset. But Biden, his administration is full of radicals and appeals to radicals. So again, who's worse? It's no contest that Joe Biden needs to not be president for another 4 years. It's no contest. As far as people saying that Trump is pandering, caring about this officer that was slain, going to the funeral, or using that as some kind of opportunity, Trump has cared about this stuff for a long time. Even in that article, like when they talk about the article he put out about the Central Park kids, and they're like, he called for their execution and stuff. He doesn't really talk about that. I mean, he wants law and order restored and criminals to basically get what's coming to them. And he talks about New York and the state of things, but it wasn't like a go execute these kids. That's how people talk about the article. And it's not like that. I recommend you guys take the time to read it yourself. That's just how it was framed. But he's always cared about New York. That's his city. I mean, I know he's not staying there now, but and how people treat him and how liberal the city is. Can you really blame him? But that's always been his, place, his home. He talks with great pride about, fixing up the ice rink and other stuff that he's done. So him going to a funeral of a slain police officer, that's not the craziest thing in the world, guys. It's really not. And even if it were him pandering, how these people operate with their pandering does tell you a little bit about what they think of folks. So Hillary Clinton, like, hot sauce in my swag bag versus something like this, like, how people operate tells you a lot about them. even if this were like insincere, which I don't think it is. So them again, that optics comparison of the ritzy fundraiser, they could have put it off, especially knowing that Trump was doing something different that day. Think about who the Biden, it wasn't the Biden administration because Trump was still president at the time. They sent Kamala to go see Jacob Blake, and she was like, "I'm proud of him." For what? Getting into it with a woman and allegedly about to steal the kids and not heeding officers' warning when he had a weapon, and then he got shot and he lived, and they made sure to make a spectacle or whatever and go down to see him and say that they were proud of him. For what? What are you proud for? It's all very strange in the height of this BLM, police are bad, etc., etc. But that was how they decided to pander. Joe Biden getting in front of a camera and talking about the trans kids and how we have to love and affirm, and then them putting out something in the White House, a statement or whatever from them, or it was like a chart. I still have the chart in here loaded up about gender um affirming care, and it has everything from accepting people's pronouns to surgeries. And those are the sorts of things that the White House, which is so weird, wants us to just go along with and do to make, I don't know, people feel like themselves. That it's just very strange, but that's who they pander to. Those are the folks that they pander to. So are your priorities affirming these fantasies, or are your priorities, hey, we want to do something about crime? We want to have safe cities. If you're the president, I'd say one of these things is really important. Far more than the other, for sure. Especially knowing that when it comes to the gender stuff, they care more about these identities than actually getting to the root of these issues with these people. And I mentioned Next Benedict the other day and explained her what the autopsy showed, that she had just high levels of the medications in her body for like Prozac and Benadryl. I read a report that said she could have swallowed like an entire bottle. It's was really high. So it was obviously intentional. But this was a young woman who was abused by her father when she was 11, and I mean sexually abused, and had all sorts of different other issues that I'm sure probably stem a lot from that psychological and physical abuse. And instead of realizing that there could be a root cause that's kind of bubbled out into these issues, and then on top of that, they're like, hey, maybe I'm a they them. Maybe she didn't really want to be a girl anymore because of the abuse that she suffered as a vulnerable little girl. Allie Stuckey, she interviewed someone, a young woman who became a, a trans man, and she ended up detransitioning after she found the gospel. And she said one of the reasons why she transitioned was because she wanted to kind of protect herself from being abused, And she said ultimately that didn't really end up protecting her anyway. But there's a lot of stuff going on underneath. But we're just supposed to affirm with the they thems when this was a human being who was hurt. And then they lied about her, like lied about everything that happened involving the death. And I talked about that yesterday. It's just crazy. I will show you guys. I know I said like yesterday I didn't want to talk that much more about it, but um I saw a video of the superintendent talking about this, making a statement about the fake news who had spread all kinds of stuff about him, and they did. So, I mean, he's right to call them out. So I'm going to go ahead and play his statement.
I did want to give everyone an update on a situation um, that has been really difficult for so many in the Owasso area. When you take a look at the family, friends, those who have known the student that lost their life, I believe every child, every single one of us, was formed and created in God's image. Every human being carries a divine spark given to us by our Creator. I addressed this tragic loss of the life of a student in Owasso at the last board meeting. It was and remains an incredible tragedy for the family, the community, and our state. I'm heartbroken for the loss of this family. I'm heartbroken for any student who is in a situation like that. I pray that all of those hurt by this will lift up prayers and that God will give them the hope and strength to come out of this. At the time, we had radical left wing activists who were aided by the fake news media who made outrageous and unfounded claims on the situation. From the beginning, in speaking with law enforcement, they were very clear publicly and privately to allow the situation to play itself out, to await the findings of the investigation. We did that here and we continued to work closely with the district, to work closely with law enforcement to see what happened so that we could figure out what are the best steps forward to continue to protect all students and all families in the state of Oklahoma. But these radical groups lied, intentionally so, to push a political narrative. They knew from the beginning they were lying, and they knew even when more information came out and the results came out yesterday that they would just continue to lie and target conservatives in this state for what happened. They wanted to use the death of a child to support a political agenda. And I think it's absolutely disgusting. And you are going to hear these groups, this woke mob, continue to push an agenda and lie to further the most radical agenda this country has ever seen. Staying alive. So here's what I will say to everyone in the state of Oklahoma. I will never back down to a woke mob. I will never lie to our kids or allow a radical agenda to be forced on our kids, no matter how many groups, how many radicals descend upon the state of Oklahoma. We will continue to support our students, our families, with the best education possible, with the best quality of resources possible, and the understanding that families know best for their kids. And so families can know that in the state of Oklahoma, we will fight for truth. We will fight for their kids. We will reject lies from the fake news media, and we will reject these radical groups here in the state of Oklahoma.
Good for him. Good for him. It sounds like obviously there are some protesters or interruptions from folks who didn't like what he had to say, but he's right. The sort of things that they were saying, the media was egregious. By the way, I told you guys the main person, at least from TikTok, who was spreading a lot of misinformation about this, who accused the right wing of being responsible for this. She has not posted an apology. I'm not surprised. She has not even posted an update since the autopsy came out. And when there was the initial reporting on the autopsy, maybe about a week or two ago, it had to be more than a week ago. But she's like, well, uh, just wait. And I don't know if she just wants to wait for like a private sort of investigation, or if she was just trying to look at the autopsy so they could see maybe this was accidental and they wanted to claim that it was a suicide. But the amount of pills that she ingested, it was definitely a suicide. And there were notes that they found, and the notes apparently from reporting wasn't related to, they didn't go deep into detail from what I found, but um wasn't about the fight or anything like that. So the whole narrative wasn't true at all. But they didn't care. They wanted to make a martyr, and I know I already said this yesterday, but she could at least apologize. The Under the Desk News, that's the name of the person, and mainstream news stuff will look at her TikToks, and she has connections with, politicians and all sorts of folks. She's pretty much in the end. And that kind of happens when you have over 3 million followers. Yes, 3 million followers, and lied to so many about this story. She could at least have the guts to issue a correction. And she blocked me on 2 different accounts for calling her out. So I'm sure when I call her out again, I'll get another block from another account. But not a peep yet. Now, again, it's only been a day, but she was quick on other stuff. And, you know, well, it came out on the 27th. Today is the 29th. I just looked at it, her page. No apologies yet. No update yet. No clarifications. Well, I had some information that was wrong. This woman lied many times. And she wasn't the only one. This went beyond social media. This went beyond TikTok. It went beyond Twitter. You had people commenting in mainstream media about it, politicians commenting about it. I'm sorry, not Nikki, Nancy Pelosi. Uh, didn't Joe Biden issue some kind of statement? I think he did. I think we read it together. I can't remember if that was a different story, but I think he did. Again, another. Yep. Yeah, I'll just go through it again. Jill and I are heartbroken by the recent loss of Next Benedict. Every young person deserves to have the fundamental right and freedom to be who they are and feel safe and supported at school and their communities. Next Benedict, a kid who just wanted to be accepted, should still be here with us today. I don't know why she let me just finish reading it. Non-binary and transgender people are some of the bravest Americans I know, but nobody should have to be brave just to be themselves. In memory of Next, we must all recommit to our work to end discrimination and address the suicide crisis impacting too many non-binary and transgender children. Bullying is hurtful and cruel, and no one should face the bullying that Next did. Parents and schools must take the reports of bullying seriously. My prayers are with Next's family, friends, and all who love them, and to all LGBTQI plus Americans for whom this tragedy feels personal. I know this. I will always have your back. To LGBTQI plus young people across the country, you are loved exactly as you are. If you're feeling overwhelmed or alone, you can call or text to the National Crisis Hotline. So still this skew of her doing this because she was bullied, when there doesn't seem to be any indication that that was the case. And her father was rearrested, I think 2 weeks before her death. So I don't know if that had anything to do with it, But it seems to be the case that many of these young people who go this route of the gender ideology, and I'll say social contagion, have sad backstories like this, or some kind of underlining mental conditions, anxiety, depression, bipolar, um, or other things going on. So they'll self diagnose and be like, oh, that's why I feel this way. So they use this poor child. They use this poor child. Someone said, well, didn't the media pretend that the bathroom fight killed her? The media absolutely did. The media absolutely did. They said that right wing rhetoric, specifically libs of TikTok, contributed to the death. And I guess they made it seem like the kids were inspired to beat her to death in the bathroom. And that's how Under the Desk News reported it, who had over 3 million followers. There are people mad a few weeks ago when they still weren't arresting the girls who were in the fight. And next started the fight. Dagny Next Benedict, she started the fight. Now, just because someone starts a fight doesn't mean you get to be all crazy with how you fight and attack somebody. But she did, the cause of death was not the fight. She had bumps and bruises, according to her own text messages, but she was okay. Maybe a little embarrassed. I don't know. She seemed to be in higher spirits when she was talking to the police officer, but I mean, we obviously know what happened. But apparently the notes didn't mention the fight, and it's really messed up that this narrative was going around knowing that there were notes, like suicide notes, or notes attributing to kind of what happened in the mentality of her. All of it's messed up and tragic, but they want to break this country apart, man. It's crazy. It's crazy how people want to break this country apart. Like the Jussie Smollett thing. No way did that story make any sense. And if you fell for it, okay, none of it made sense. The story didn't make any sense at all. But people wanted to believe it because they wanted to push that there was such kind of, you know, homophobia and racism or whatever, that story could be plausible, that this man was walking, what was it, 3 a.m. in a polar vortex in Chicago. He got jumped by some dudes in a MAGA hat saying this is MAGA country in Chicago. Okay. And Ellen Page, she was still married and identifying as a woman at the time. She went on a talk show and was talking about how terrible Trump is. Well, I think mostly maybe Mike Pence, and she's like, she wouldn't. They're awful, and they wouldn't even want me to get married to my wife, and she ain't even with that woman no more. And she don't even think she a woman no more. Just narrative after narrative. The stupid NASCAR rope situation. They would have been mad at me because I've been like, because all these other NASCAR drivers walked with Bubba Wallace. I would have been like, the story sounds fishy. I'm good. I've been like, what's wrong with her? Why is it showing camaraderie? I've been like, I just think we need some more information. And it was just like a garage pool. And then there was some kind of video sometime later about him, and they covered that scandal. He was like still mad about how people wouldn't just kind of stand by him the way that he wanted them to. And I'm like, but you were dumb. Why are you mad at people when you were an idiot? What? But they want this country to be so awful. They do. And they want to keep hyping up this stuff. And I think it goes beyond clicks. I think it goes maybe even beyond the politics. Because they want to, I don't know, tear things down and remake it in their image. That's kind of the MO of like CRT anyway. Anyway, I gotta move on to this article really quick. I'm gonna go ahead and read it from my phone because the site has a lot of ads, and I don't know if I'll start playing things while I'm talking to you guys. So I'm just gonna read it to you folks. Someone did ask me in the comments. I'm assuming the question is about who is Trump's VP going to be. I have no idea. And I've asked people who are in the know and have pretty good connections and closeness to Trump and stuff and his team. And they don't know, no. At least last I had a conversation. So, and I guess if someone told me in confidence, I wouldn't exactly tell you guys anyway. But I don't know. I think there's different people who met with him. Maybe I don't know. Out of all the names that have been pointed out, maybe Tim Scott. I don't know. I think Haley was probably a possibility. But the I don't know, the primary might have dragged a little too long, and he doesn't really need to make a deal with her. You know, deals should be like shored up before people have to drop out. And she probably ran a little too long. So I don't think it'll probably be her. And I think it's gonna I don't know. I think Tim Scott makes sense, but I don't know. And you guys know I don't like to predict because I don't like to be wrong, but I don't know. We'll see. We'll find out soon enough, though, guys. We'll find out soon enough. So, Inspiring Philosophy is their apologist page, and they had shared this article. This is how I found it, but this is from Spiked. Now Canada is euthanizing autistic people. A father has discovered he is powerless to stop his perfectly healthy daughter being killed. Imagine one day you discover that your adult daughter, who still lives with you, wants to be euthanized. As far as you are aware, she's healthy. She suffers from autism and ADHD, but no physical illnesses or disabilities that you know of. You know that she has faced many difficulties in her life, but you love her and desperately want to prevent her death. You are left fighting against her doctors, who encourage her decision and are perfectly happy to help her go through with this. To make this nightmare even worse, no one will even tell you why your daughter has been approved to die. This is the awful reality facing one father in Alberta, Canada. A judge issued a ruling this week that clears the way for a 27-year-old woman known to the court as only MV to be accepted into Canada's Medical Assistance in Dying program. Despite the attempts by her father, known as WV, to prevent this, there was really very little that could have been done. Under Canadian law, the court has no choice but to allow his daughter to be killed. According to the twisted logic of assisted dying campaigners, this is the compassionate option. To be eligible for MAID, a patient needs to have a grievous and irredeemable medical condition. In court, MV did not need to identify which medical condition she is supposed to be suffering from. She was not required to provide information about her symptoms or explain how they cause her to suffer. All her parents have have seen is the evidence that she followed the correct procedures to access MAID and that her eligibility was approved by 2 doctors. WV argues that the doctors were wrong to conclude that his daughter met the MAID criteria. He told the courts that she was diagnosed in 2016 with autism spectrum disorder. She also has a long history of seeking medical diagnoses for physical ailments, but to her father's knowledge, no diagnosis was ever made. He said it is unclear to him whether she suffers from any physical condition at all. He speculated that she may suffer from psychological conditions that cause her to believe that she suffers from psychological symptoms. Envy's case gives a disturbing insight into just how easy it can be to access MAID. Patients can simply shop around for doctors who are willing to give their approval. Her first application was turned down because one of the 2 doctors she consulted said she did not meet the criteria. It is not known when she made this application. She made a second application in 2023. Again, one doctor determined her to be eligible and the other did not. The Alberta Health Services then allowed her to obtain a third assessment, a tiebreak. However, this is so sick. This is so sick, man. A tiebreaker to let it be known whether we can kill you or not. However, the doctor selected to break the tie was the same doctor who had already agreed with Envy's first MAID application. Who was responsible for this decision? We will probably never know. The court agreed that Envy had no obligation to answer any of her parents' questions about her medical condition or the MAID process. The judge declared that the court cannot review a MAID applicant's decision making or the clinical judgment of the doctors and nurse practitioners. Because of medical privacy laws, her parents can never know why 2 doctors felt it was acceptable for the state to euthanize their daughter. Life and death decisions are being made in secret by unaccountable figures. Assisted in dying campaigners often claim that they are on the side of compassion, but stopping a father from saving his daughter's life is surely the cruelest outcome possible. Anyone who still believes that euthanasia prevents suffering needs to seriously think again. So, Canada is wild right now, folks. Canada is wild right now, and they want to be able to do that, do more MAID in the US and stuff. And we got to push back up against that. One time, they were voting on it in Minnesota, and I had a friend come on so we could talk about it because he lives in that state, and some folks are going back and forth with him on Twitter, and someone had said, well, we have enough compassion. We treat dogs more humane than we do people because they'll put a dog down or something if it's near the end of its life. And I said, have you ever considered that the reason why we do that to animals more often is because it's not humane to do that? So you obviously wouldn't treat the dogs, the animals, like you would a human. There's a different sort of value spectrum there. And I just don't think that we should so easily give the right to take one's life from someone else. And they're going through like a process, sure, but that seems like a very slim, easy process that's very easy to find a workaway around. If someone wants to do something to themselves, I don't know how you can. Well, we even try to stop people from doing that. If you try to take your life, someone will put you on like a involuntary hold. We're not to the point where in Futurama they had the booths where you could go in and just be taken out of the world. But I don't know, keep living life. Someone might suggest it. Someone might build that, say that we need to have that right to do that. But this is insane. I can't imagine being a parent and someone working the system like that to be able to get that approval, and then you can't even know the reason why. It is being autistic an irredeemable situation. Is that how you define that? An ADHD? And that's what we're allowing people to be killed for? I don't like this at all. And the people talk about Canada's health and like try to say, oh, so much better than the US. And then some of the MAID stories I've talked about and read with you guys is people doing it for financial reasons, like people who may not even want to die, but they're like, don't know how they're going to afford the medical bills and other stuff like that, or they can't get the assistance they want. And I'm like, how is this happening? And maybe that's, you know, people, I mean, I don't know how much money and stuff is in people being able to perform these executions here, but I guess it's another mouth to not have to feed, or someone else's medical bills that the taxpayers don't have to shove out for, I guess. And there's just a lot of gross things going on here. A lot of gross things going on here. So I was glad, at least when I read one story I mentioned at the top of the hour about a mother who kind of, she found out accidentally that her son was going to get the maid because he was going blind. That was the reason. Not some kind of debilitating cancer that was eroding everything within him away. He was going blind. And so there was such controversy after she found out was fighting to save her son's life that I think the doctors kind of like backed away from it. But I don't know if there's some kind of other follow up that happened there. But allowing this option out there as if it's compassionate or in a right that's owed to these people, it's just going to make things worse. It's just going to make things worse. And you'll hear more stories like this. So when you guys see people try to push for it in the US, just remember those slippery slopes get real slick. Before I let you guys go and so you can enjoy the rest of your weekend, I wanted to draw attention to this tweet from Miss Candace Owens about the continued debate about Crisis King. And I am going to do like a separate kind of lengthy video detailing a lot of all this. But I want to address this point that she made here while I have you. She's okay. She said, "Oh, well, let me explain it really quick. So, if you don't know, get you up to speed. Uh, Christians believe that Christ is king. That's, given, right? However, there have been instances of people using that phrase to troll some Jewish folks. Like, well, I guess I could just maybe pull it up and show you guys. I think I have it saved somewhere. One of the examples. I can find it real quick. I don't know if I bookmarked it or it was there's lots of examples, but I didn't save too many, but there's one with people being mean to Ben Shapiro's sister. And there's like, Jesus Christ is king, you filthy such and such. Yeah, Joel Berry has one when it's Christ is king, Zionist slime. So that's an example. There is a photo that Ben Shapiro, I'm sorry, not Ben Shapiro, his sister, Abby, with her and her baby. And someone in the comments says, "Don't poke the baby's eye out." And people talk about the Jewish nose, and then they said Christ is king. So it's instances like that, but in a debate, I can't find the photo. I'll show it in my video though when I break it down more. Um, in a debate that Lauren Chin hosted about the topic Christ is king, Nick Fuentes, who has said many racist, sexist, homophobic, and I don't mean this in like a buzzword kind of situation. Like he's made a lot of like really egregious comments. He's a very problematic figure. Um, and it's not hard to find evidence for that. I mean, he was even at the Unite the Right rally in Charlottesville and said it was incredible and you will not replace us, all that kind of rhetoric. So I would not want to be positively associated with Fuentes in any sort of light. But he did say that if you hear Christ is king at a rally or at some kind of political event, like chanting or whatever, that's usually, he thought that everybody basically knew, I guess, at this point that his group had co opted that. So, just so folks know, he's not saying that like they totally own that phrase or anything like that, but his fans do use that. So folks who are just under the impression that no one is negatively using that, and they wouldn't say that they're negatively using that, though I think, chanting Christ is king after someone says that they love Hitler is pretty awful. But they'd probably argue that they're not doing it to be awful. But anyway, there's bad people using the phrase. So and perhaps it's to troll, to force people into that situation to have to criticize the folks who are using Christ as king, to be like, how dare you people who say you're Christians complain about Christ as king. I'm sure there's an ultimate sort of troll there from folks like Fuentes, but regardless, we got to talk about it a little bit. So anyway, that's a little short background. So Candace wrote, in any and every scenario, it is appropriate for me to state I am a woman. It does not become transphobic if I declare that truth in the presence of a man who thinks he is a woman. Watching Christians use leftist logic to try to explain how Christ is king can sometimes be anti Semitic is honestly embarrassing and has done little more than expose the inconsistencies in their own logic. Christ is king no matter who says it. That's how truth works. The attempt to scandalize truth is only done by those who inherently hate it. Those who inherently hate Christ are attempting to scandalize him. Similarly, those who inherently hate women are the ones who have tried to scandalize gender. So, this line about those who inherently hate Christ are attempting to scandalize him, I think that's true, but I think the folks like Nick Fuentes are the ones who are scandalizing it. And Candace said that she heard that live, by the way. So, and she also said she said she felt that he held his own. Um, she also said about Jeremy Boring, but I just wouldn't go out of my way to say anything positive about a white supremacist. If it was me, maybe she rejects those labels that have been on him. I don't know. It's not hard to find controversial things from Nick. I know a lot of people will shrug it off like, oh, he's just being edgy. When you're adult, I think there's some things you don't do just to be edgy, but after you get a certain age, when is it like not cute to try to be edgy? Like saying stuff like Hitler's cool or whatever. But yeah, I agree that people are attempting to scandalize Christ and they're not being good representations, but they're the ones who are claiming that they're the Christians, and they're saying the Christians who are noticing what they're doing are not good Christians. And I don't understand why. Well, I say I don't understand, but um, I'll just say it's interesting that she keeps trying to pacify these folks doing these bad things and not just acknowledging that there's folks out there doing bad things, because that's just what everyone else is kind of pointing at. Because Christ is King is absolutely not an anti-Semitic statement. It's not a hateful statement. That does that mean that people can take statements that aren't hateful and try to um, abuse them? Absolutely. Um, for example, is it a zucchini? No, it's not a zucchini. Uh, what's there's particular vegetables or whatever that are associated with sexual things in text emojis and other stuff like that. Those veggies by themselves, are they sexual? Nope. Does that mean people use things and there's becomes kind of like an understanding of what people are doing? Yeah. So language is the truth is always the truth. But there's all kinds of things that we do with language, and things can have double meanings, certainly. So this idea that someone can't take Christ as King and try to be terrible with it is a little absurd. A little absurd. And Christ isn't the same as a woman, obviously. They don't have the same meaning, they don't have the same gravity. To use the Lord's name for political purposes like this, to build division instead of leading people to Christ in the gospel, to use the name in vain, is wrong. The people can lie about the word woman. I don't think people lying about the word woman or being misguided about what a woman is and saying all those things obviously can be sinful because if you're telling a lie or whatever. So that's bad. Doing negative things in the name of Christ, that has a bigger moral repercussion for you. Far greater. So I don't like this example too much. And I wonder why. As Kit Kat said, Satan quoted scripture to Jesus. Absolutely. Absolutely. Pharisees knew scripture quite well. They believed that they were the men of God doing righteousness. And they had everything wrong as far as what was what was really important. And again, Nick plainly said that his group, they have taken that phrase. And if you're at a rally, some kind of event that has to do with politics, and you hear Christ is King, that it's safe to assume that those people are his folks. And they feel that their movement is growing. And by the way, Nick got kicked off of YouTube and he got kicked off of Twitter, which is now X. But he's on Twitter right now, and his name, I don't know how many profiles he has, but one of them is like Standis fan, and he has a picture of Candace Owens as his profile. So he's just loving her right now. You know? And she had another tweet that was interesting. I had retweeted a screenshot of it. She said the most interesting part of this for me, talking about the live that Lauren Chin hosted that Nick was on and Jeremy Boring and other folks. The most interesting part of this for me was that I never knew Nick Fuentes was blacklisted when he was just 18 years old from people at the Daily Wire smearing him for asking questions about Israel. Nick says they fed him to the ADL. As many people brought up in this conversation, it is ironic, to say the least, that someone clearly fed me to the ADL upon my departure from the Daily Wire, and they did this by trying to smear me as somehow connected me to Nick Fuentes via Christ is King, although I legitimately do not know Nick. Strange coincidence indeed. And I think I don't know. When she said Christ is King, I did not know what Nick claimed or about them using that phrase like that. So it was kind of news to me. I thought they were doing that after she had said that to Ben. Um, so I had to go back. I'm like, oh, they've been doing this for a while. So I don't believe that she actually said. I'm not making the allegation that she said Christ is King when she was arguing with Ben to signal Nick Fuentes and his crowd. I guess I'm not ruling that out, but I'll be charitable and say it's perfectly reasonable that she didn't know that. I mean, I didn't know that. So I still think she obviously used that to in a way that she was telling off Ben. And then it avalanched of a lot of people using it to come at Ben. And I didn't think that was great. I thought her attack with the scriptures and even how she framed his reply was dishonest, and I've gone through that. I'm not gonna go through the whole thing again. But the echoing what Nick is saying here, and just because she just doesn't know him doesn't mean she doesn't know of him. But claiming that he was smeared for just asking questions about Israel isn't true. And they always say just asking questions. Some people are just asking questions, I guess. But Ben Shapiro had a show today that was literally called Just Asking Questions. So I thought that was interesting. He didn't mention Candace by name though, but he talked about people's different conspiracies. And it seemed like maybe midway through he eventually got to the asking questions thing. He's like, children ask questions. That's a game that children play. He's like, my children ask questions. Adults who are asking these questions are probably inferring something and trying to lead people into some kind of a conclusion and then just going, I'm just asking questions. So that's what it seems like many of the times when people are asking these questions. But Nick, I mean, he said that Matt Walsh was a traitor because he works for Jews. In the live, in the live, not the live, but the space that she apparently listened to. I don't know if she listened to the whole thing, but she obviously listened to it. Nick said things like, "Oh, people who won't say Christ is King shouldn't be in positions of power. That he wouldn't hire someone who wouldn't do it, which that's a civil rights violation." And he complained to Jeremy Boring about Ben being the face of the Daily Wire, even though he won't say Christ is King. And Ben is clearly a Jew. So he wants these people being shut out of society. And that's obviously not good. He's also talked about violent things. There was a great thread. And A.G. Hamilton pointed out that he didn't even talk about Israel that much at first. But Benny Johnson made a thread with some of Fuentes' stuff. And this was a post that he made about Charlottesville. Wow, what an incredible rally here at Charlottesville. We took mace, pepper spray, feces. They sent the National Guard, counter protesters, had the governor declare a state of emergency, all to silence us. They know the stakes. You can call us racist, white supremacists, Nazis, and bigots. You can disavow us on social media from your cushy campus reform job, but you will not replace us. The rootless transnational elite know that a tidal wave of white identity is coming, and they know that once the word gets out, they will not be able to stop us. The fire rises. Um, so, and according to Benny, that happened hours after Heather Heyer was killed at the event. That was such an awful day for the country. Such an awful day. And that exploded into being an awful time for Trump. I think he also called Trump a cuck for denouncing the white supremacists too. And he said things about the Holocaust and uses slurs for Jews and gay people, and um, said racist stuff too. I mean, you could say he's just being edgy, but there's a pattern there, guys. There's a pattern. So when people show you who they are, I don't know why people don't believe them. So this whole he's just asking questions thing. Nope. And people need to just stop that. Like the question, they're just asking questions. Nope. And Candace would say that for herself too. Like she was upset that the pro-Israel lobby was like calling her stupid or making her look stupid over the comment she made about the Muslim quarters, which she was debunking, trying to debunk the idea that Israel is a bastion of freedom because she went there and there are Muslim quarters. And Ami Kozak, who's a comedian, was like that's not where they have to live. That's just where they live. It's just like a Muslim neighborhood. There's an Armenian quarter and et cetera, et cetera. And so she argued with him a little bit, but that clip went very viral. And so then she ended up going on her show complaining about them trying to make her look stupid for just asking the question. No, you didn't just ask a question. You made an accusation that was informed by your ignorance. And that's an L you should just take instead of saying stuff like this is why Israel's losing support. Because they pointed out you said something dumb. And it's okay if you don't know things. It's totally okay. But the confidence in which you know nothing is astounding. So saying that Nick was fed to the ADL, people don't like the Daily Wire, other folks don't like the ADL. The ADL does smear people, but Nick's not a great guy. Nick's not a great guy. And the person who suggested that she was fed to the ADL as well was Sovereign Bra. His name is Chase. I don't know his last name, but sometimes you might see him on the Forever podcast. I'm sorry, not Forever, whatever podcast. But Jeremy Boring was like, no, we did not coordinate with the ADL to get rid of Candace Owens. And no one had to, I said this the other day, no one had to feed her to the ADL. She left her own trail of breadcrumbs to where she was. But they did try to connect her to Nick because Nick is praising Candace Owens for her anti-Israel, anti-Jew content. So that's the thing. They weren't saying that she knew him. They were just, from my understanding, noting that he's a fan. He's a fan. So there's no conspiracy there. There's no conspiracy there. I mean, there's people who don't like you who want you gone. Media Matters looks at content from the right if you're big enough to try to bring down hosts. That happens all the time. ADL, try to bring down people like Elon Musk. They try to bring him down. And so these organizations, they will smear people. They will. And Candace Owens has been a victim of smears in the past. That doesn't mean that she's on the up and up right now. So I just sorry, I wanted to draw your attention to some stuff. Anyway, thank you guys for joining me today. Please go blacktnews.com, check on different content on my website, videos, etc. Drop in your email. The article from CNN has not come out to my knowledge yet, and again, any kind of email from the author of it, but he said it should come out this weekend, so I'd assume maybe it's going to come out tomorrow, which would be neat, and hopefully it's all good, but I'll let you guys know. And again, if it's a hot mess or something, we'll I'm going through my email to make sure he didn't email me. Nope, not seeing anything yet. So I'm assuming that it'll probably come out tomorrow, and I'll post on my social media, and we'll probably talk about it on Monday. But no, it's pretty neat, and I hope you guys have a good weekend, and consider going to church this weekend if it's not something you normally do. A good church, because there's a lot of people out there who aren't on the up and up. So make sure you find a good church with some good, solid biblical teaching if you want to spend your Easter there. So I'm going to have a good weekend. I assume I always do. Be safe, have fun, and I will see you guys on Monday. God bless you. And yes, happy Resurrection Sunday weekend. Thank you guys.